Hello, welcome to episode 2 of The Wave with myself, Patrick. I'm the owner of Subaru Mechanics, the Facebook group, and I'm here with Dave from Simply Subarus, and we are ready for another great episode for you guys. We have been brainstorming and putting things together all week, thinking about all the different topics we want to talk about, and we got some really fun stuff from the new statement Subaru put out on tariffs, all the way to can you run a Subaru Baja on canola oil? So, um, and finally, we're going to talk a little bit about OBD III and what that means for the future and for your car and your business. So, so I think we're going to jump right in now and just start talking about these tariffs and the craziness behind it all. So, I want to start off by just kind of first reading off the Subaru statement that they put out, just so we're all on the same page of what the changes they're making and kind of what we're seeing here. So I'm going to share that photo here so we can all read it. So basically, it's saying that Subaru is actively assessing the potential effects of tariffs on our business, inevitably increase the cost of doing business as a result. If new tariffs are applied on April 2nd, the following changes to vehicle pricings apply. So they're saying that essentially, no pricing of any vehicle is guaranteed. Even with MSRP, it sounds like all pricing is going to be kind of like, in my eyes, this sounds a lot like COVID pricing, where all of a sudden vehicles were 20 grand over list price for no reason. I think Subaru is going to be trying to do the best they can, but at the end of the day, the problem is these dealers have a lot of control over the pricing. Once the car hits their lot, it's their sale, not Subaru's. So, the difference is that if Subaru raises a car $2,000, right? Well, now the dealership says, well, we need $5,000 to make up for the $2,000 that we're losing. So now they're going to up their prices even more. And it just kind of is a chain effect. So, it also says sold orders will continue to be accepted. However, current vehicle pricing cannot be protected and may be subject to change. So that to me was like really eye-opening, because sold orders not being, solid on their pricing, something you've already purchased now could cost you more money.
I would assume that's if you haven't taken delivery of it, of course, though. I mean, I think once you have the vehicle, I don't see any legal way they're able to rewrite their contract in a sense. You know what I mean? Like, or your agreement.
I'm saying it must be tough, right? When you pre-order, let's say a new WRX or something, and all of a sudden, like now you were expecting to finance a vehicle that was going to be, let's say, 30, 35 grand, whatever, and now it's 40. And now you're like, well, I didn't plan on buying a $40,000 vehicle. So, again, we don't have to take the car, but unfortunately it kind of hurts the brand on that end. So,
well, I think it's going to not just be Subaru, it's going to be across the board. It's going to be every automaker is going to be effectively, facing this, and not just automakers. Every industry is going to see its own reflections of this. And we've seen this already, the same kind of effective email or notification kind of put out by a lot of our suppliers, or our parts vendors. So, and that's understandable. While they do as best they can to maintain local production, things like that, at the end of the day, there are products part of that production that come from other countries. And so that's going to be a reflection. We're going to effectively see that. And at the end of the day, when it comes to new cars, I kind of believe that there's going to be, I think, a higher increase surrounding, the fact that you have obviously an entire car, 1,000, let's say, 500,000 parts, let's call it, on any given vehicle that could be coming from any different given country. That gets really, really complex from a logistics standpoint. Surely at the end of the day, from the repairing aspect, it's going to go up as well. But I think it's going to be comparative, as it always is that repairing your car is generally going to be more cost effective than buying something new.
Yeah, and
Depending on the
again,
circumstances, of course.
that's something that everybody felt in COVID. I mean, you couldn't get a new
Yep.
car. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like this is, you're still going to be able to get the vehicles. It's just going to be more expensive, but I feel like all of these auto companies are still reeling from COVID. I mean, that was only 5 years ago, and it wasn't until like probably 2 years ago that they got their production sorted back out. And now we're running into the issue of like they're all running around trying to figure out how to get all these cars over here. Like, I just heard a story the other day that Apple sent like a million or a couple million phones over to the US right before tariffs hit just to try to get some product here before everything hit the fan. But I think Subaru, just from reading their statement, it sounds like they're going to continue to try to do their best, but I feel like that's kind of everyone's statement right now, is just a little bit of what are we going to do? I think it's definitely a tough one. So,
And
um,
yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point, we all just have to be semi-reactionary to a sense. You know what I mean? That's the best we can do. Like we said, it's like, you know what? You can try to predict things the best to your ability, but at the same time, from companies I've heard, automakers as well, like Apple, you mentioned, were, if not purchasing up or importing things in quantities just to kind of try to get ahead of things, but at the same time, there's a cost association with that. If, let's say, you overreach and you import too much, and then all of a sudden here in 6 months, let's say things change, now you're stuck with all the stuff that you paid a lot to get over here, rush over here, you know what I mean, in a timely fashion, so to speak. I think that's where companies just have to kind of weigh it, is how much do we want to guess on the future, or gamble, so to speak, because it is a gamble. And that's where, as the consumers, ultimately we'll just have to kind of be, like I said, reactionary to a point. There's nothing really much we can do on our end, and I think other than just kind of wait and see what happens and do the best that we can with what comes down the pipeline, so to speak.
yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that, the side of it that makes me upset is we finally hit the years where the best vehicles from the 90s are coming over. And now all these small importing businesses are probably like, well, this
Oh
took a
God,
turn.
that's a good point.
Like,
It's a really good point.
It's not just new cars that are taking the hit. It's these cars that, I see every day now. There's cars all over my town. I mean, even I'm in a small town and I got these little K trucks all over the place. So
Yeah,
I feel like everybody's going to end up taking a hit, because it's not just new cars, it's everything that's coming over, and it's unfortunate.
it's
But
true.
I think that as far as Subaru goes, they're a large company. They'll be able to navigate this pretty well. They can always find ways to write things off, or there'll be a way to try to get the pricing sort of back to normal.
Sure.
But these small companies that are bringing cars over, I fear that it may just be too big of a hit for them. I mean, they're trying to get 2, 3, 5, 10 cars over here at a time. That could be their whole profit margin is now just gone, so.
It's a good point. I hadn't considered that, but yeah, you're right. There's a lot of other industries, kind of, as I mentioned, that even I hadn't considered, but that are going to be affected by this. I mean, obviously the whole JDM market, you know what I mean, to a sense, might be affected by this in a sense. You want those specific JDM part, or maybe we'll see something happen with the cost of these JDM engines that are reportedly coming over here for. I say there's a range there, and that's a whole other topic. But there's good JDM and there's bad JDM, as we know. And so I think that'll certainly, you're right. It'll put the squeeze on anyone that's doing it on the bad end of things. If they're offering the $500 engine, you know what I mean? It's like, $500 engine is what it is. And when there's a whole side of things. I think someone made a post about it in the group about looking inside of certain, kind of a catalog of across, let's say, 20 different engines that he's seen, and some of which, these things are clearly not represented right. Their cylinders full of water and rust and things like that. So it's like, okay, there's your $500 JDM engine, and I don't think you're going to be able to make a profit on that anymore. So that
Yeah.
might help in some turn kind of clean things up. I always say the silver lining, if you will, of COVID, as you mentioned, was it definitely made it so a lot of the shops that were barely getting by and kind of, let's call it, doing the less than right thing, they had an even harder time, I think, than the shops that really had built up a reputation and had a loyal customer base that supported them.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's some of these importers like I think it's Japanese Classics. I see a lot of, they're a really big operation. It seems like they have warehouses here, they have warehouses in Japan. Like, they're one of those companies that may be okay, but a friend of mine who works locally, Federal Legal Imports, he's a very small operation. He gets a lot of the cars that are the ones that Japanese Classics probably wouldn't want. And he gets them in and he tries to, get the stuff that people would still want to buy, like the chasers and stuff like that. And he, he has his own business. He's been doing really good for a long time. And I feel like this is something that would definitely affect him. And um, yeah, and what's interesting is that what I read is that Japan has always had a 0% tariffs on any Japanese vehicles that they ship out of the country. So to me, it's almost upsetting that we are now kind of hammering them with tariffs with the cars coming in, and they've been nice to us, by not putting any tariffs on them leaving. So it really is what it is. I think it's just going to take a lot of navigating to figure out this whole situation. So,
of course, we're just going to have to wait and see. I mean, I think that's the problem with where we're at is speculations aside, we'll just have to do what we can. And ultimately, I think it'll all work itself out in the end. I mean, it's not like this will be the end of Subaru, you know what I mean, by any stretch,
yeah,
Subaru will be just fine in the end of the day,
yeah,
and its consumer base will effectively still be, if not the same, even stronger at the end of it. I'm confident in that.
And I think that, like we were saying before, this is going to lead to a lot of people fixing the cars that they already have. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, if it costs you $5,000 or $10,000 more dollars to buy the car that you want now, a lot of people will just wait. They'll just wait to see once they figure out the pricing and try to find a way to get their car to make it till then. So I think for shops, at least, it's going to be a good thing because a lot of people are going to be fixing their cars instead of buying new, which we saw in COVID. I mean, people were coming in left and right. Business was booming for a lot of shops. So, yeah.
Well, and even auto parts, you know what I mean? Because for the DIYers, which we support full heartedly, the auto parts industry has definitely seen its struggles over the last couple of years through COVID and what have you. So I think it's going to be equally as good for them while tariffs and things like that will certainly affect them as well. I don't see it being on the same scale when you're not producing an entire vehicle, you know what I mean, for resale.
Yeah, I hear you. So on that note, I want to switch over topics here and kind of talk about something that you and I spoke a little bit in depth about, which is these private equity groups that are starting to buy shops. And, even though higher tariffs may be good for shops because more cars are getting fixed, it doesn't help if the shop doesn't exist. I think that anybody who, at least I'm in the New Jersey area, but anybody on the East Coast will know that Mavis has been buying up all the STS shops. They have become this massive corporation that everywhere you go, you will see a Mavis. Everywhere you go, I'm sure you'll see either a Firestone or a Pep Boys, or, there's just all of these companies now that have turned into chains. And then once they turned into chains, they had to buy more shops, and those shops are the ones that you own. And so what we have found is that, even companies, the most recent one is that Donut Media, they got purchased by Recurrent Ventures. That's this big conglomerate that was able to purchase the whole company and essentially just kind of took it over to run it as their own business. And that's the end of Donut Media being privately owned. And unfortunately, a lot of creative things come out of these companies that were started by the original owners, and they are able to do anything that they want. And then the second they get purchased, now there's rules. Now there's things they have to abide by. Even with shops, like I know a lot of Mavises you walk into, they may have done engine repairs for the last 20 years in that shop, but now that it's a Mavis, they will not take your engine out. They will not work on it, and that's just the way that things are. So, I know that you were excited to talk about this because this is something that you've been following for a little while. So, what was your take on these companies buying all these shops and where this kind of goes from here?
Yeah, it's something that I've even seen as a small business. We've only been around for about 6 years, and I've been approached by several of these larger private equity groups, and they always send the emails are pretty much, or the phone calls are always the same. They always promise, or they first start with, we're backed by $10 billion, some big number that basically makes you misconstrue that, you're going to get $10 million for your business or whatever. But they're like, we're paying up to $10 million for businesses. Okay. And we promise, we guarantee we're going to maintain the culture and, keep the people that are there and all this. And I've actually seen this take place personally for several local shops here, where, a private equity group comes in and they promise to inject money, get new equipment, make everything great and still maintain culture, fine and well. 6 months in, now they're going to be, everyone has to come in Saturdays. Another 6 months in, hey, you know what? We're 7 days a week now. And we're going to bring in another rotating staff, and you all work part-time now. We're not laying anyone off. We say we're not going to lay anyone off. We're just going to cut your hours. We're going to all give you part-time hours because we're going to bring in our own people. And we're going to have an alternating staff because, we can't work 7 days a week, 80-hour weeks without having alternating staff. So that's how we grow the business. Come on, guys. We told you we're going to grow the business. And that's not to say that's always how it pans out, but I've seen that exact situation pan out here locally, and I think it's disconcerting to where more oftentimes than not, they're getting wise to the naming, the branding, to where they don't want to change the name of the shop because they may have already built a great local following, what have you. And so they want to maintain that and I guess I would use the term masquerade as effectively a small business still, even though they're not. And so that's what I really have learned to prioritize as a consumer, not just, as humbly a small shop owner, but as a consumer in my day-to-day, is looking deeper into who owns the establishments, that I spend my money on, or spend my money with effectively. I vote with my dollars. So I try to support many local businesses I possibly can. And so whether that be restaurants here locally, I want to know that, they are owned by a local, owner, as opposed to some Fortune 500 company that is not really invested in effectively. And this is something I believe in, is the people, because that's really what makes the business. And it's not just so much the customers. It sounds kind of mean, so to speak, I guess, for lack of a better term to say, but we really, or I really care about the people that actually work at my shop. And so in part to that is, I believe if the people that work in a business have a good work environment, they're going to do good work. It just, everything kind of solves itself and the customers will come as a result. So I don't try to put too much emphasis on that kind of corporate mentality. And that's one of the beauties I always say of us being a small business, is that we are able to change things immediately. So if there's something that, hey, we have a system in place that isn't working for us, We can change that. We don't have to go up a corporate ladder. We don't have to ask anybody. We can change it and make it work for us and make it work for our customers. You know, that's the main goal.
Yeah, I think that part of it as well is that it ends up costing everyone more money, right? Because when you think about it, if you own your own shop, you're able to set your own pricing, you're able to set your own hours, you're able to get parts at the prices that you want. But what happens is when the Movis comes in and they end up getting purchased, or they purchase whatever shop was there and they turn it into their own franchise, right? Now there's a guy in charge of this place that he has to come up with 5 to 10% of his gross profit that he has to give back to corporate. He has to purchase everything that corporate says he has to purchase for the building to look that way. He has to use their own suppliers and has to get products that they certify. So what ends up happening is if you end up needing a part, and let's say you can get it $200 cheaper, using another manufacturer other than going through the dealer or something like that, Movis may say, no, we don't go through the dealer, or, we don't go through these little side market manufacturers. You're going to go through us, and we are going to give you the part for this price. And this is the only price you're selling it at. And there is no negotiation. You are set at this, and this is how things are. And it just, that's where it takes away a little bit of the hometown friendly shop kind of thing, is that they just lose all control of what they're capable of, and it takes away their identity as a shop. They're not able to put up their own signs and their own taste on the building and their own, staff together that they approve it of. It's like, it's just a little bit of that. And that leads me back to the Donut Media purchase. Donut Media, some stats on them, right? They'll have an audience of 78 million monthly video views. They'll have 5.8 million YouTube subscribers, 4 million Facebook followers, and basically all of that just got added to this company, Recurrent, who also owns the Drive and Car Bibles. So, on top of that, they own a bunch of
buying everything up. They're buying everything up they can. And it's the irony though is you look at all of the, let's call them the original quote unquote, or majority of the original content creators who started Donut Media, who are now off doing their own things. Pretty much overnight, within 24 hours, they brought all of their following with them. So It just goes to show you that you can throw a bunch of money at something, so to speak, at these private equity groups, and sometimes it doesn't guarantee it buys you success. Because you're gonna alienate the people that effectively created, something with their blood, sweat, and tears and their hearts. And beyond that, you're also going to not have the same passion that's put into that, on the same level. When you care about something and it's yours, you're going to put every ounce of everything you have into it, compared to when you're expected to meet deadlines and, all the corporate meetings I'm sure they had to endure up until them kind of leaving. That weighs on people. And that's not, I think, the way that people want to live their life. I mean, I think COVID kind of taught a lot of people that is, what is the value of how you want to live your life. And being engaged in corporate meetings and, having too much structure to a point, I think ultimately stifles people's innovation,
Yeah. And I think that at the end of it, right, the way I see this is it's all gambling. It's all just this company Recurrent saying, hey, if we buy a company that has 5 million subscribers or 78 million views a month on their videos, if we just get one thing in front of all of those people, 10 times, and they buy it or they click on it, or, it'll pay for itself. They don't really care what the product is and how it comes out. They just care that it ends up making money because you're still getting something in front of eyes, and that's all that they're buying. So, while and while the company, this is another thing, is while the company says that they're looking to expand the, what they're going to be doing with donut media and what their capabilities are going to be now that they're part of this company. The funny part to me is when they tell them what they can't do, is when they say, hey, Recurrent actually also owns Outdoor Life. And I saw that, one of the guys on your team wrote a review about his camping gear and said that this tent was like something that shouldn't be purchased. We need you to take that down because actually one of our businesses actually creates that tent and now you're causing problems for us. And so, you know what I mean? Like, not saying that's a real thing that happened, but I'm saying that like, this is where it starts to get to that, like, you're not able to just put out what you want anymore and just have it be your own opinion. It's like your opinion is controlled by these people that they tell you what you can and can't do based on how it affects them business wise and essentially their stock in your company. It's the whole thing is just kind of backwards. And that's how a lot of these companies have been for a long time, and I saw this firsthand. I worked for a bunch of different UPS stores way back when I was in like high school and college. And the biggest thing I saw about UPS stores is that everybody thinks it's a UPS. They all think that UPS owns it, but they don't. They make it look like that. And then the poor guy who buys a UPS store is sold on like, oh, you're going to be a shop owner. You're going to have all this money coming in. And then guess what? You end up having to do everything that they tell you to do, and you owe them 10% at the end of the month. The chunk of money that UPS takes from these guys, they have to make it up. And now Amazon, you walk in there and just scan the labels and they get 50 cents per scan and they're not making any money. So like at the end of the day, right, you look at Mavis, this could happen to any company, right? At first they're sold on the fact they're going to be doing a lot of mechanic work and they're going to be selling tires and anything else. And then all of a sudden you turn around and they say, well, you know what? Tires have really gone online. And so we're going to sell them through the Mavis online store instead. And we're going to ship them to your store. And you're not going to get any profit out of this, but you are going to install them and you're going to get the $5 to put the tires on, and it's like,
and you don't have a say. And you won't have a say.
There is, so
I call it the Uber. It's like kind of how Uber operated, kind of pretty much strong-arm taxi companies, out of existence. That's, I guess, the bigger fear. If everyone's enticed by $19.99 full synthetic up to 7-quart oil changes for $19.99, the BlackRocks of the world, they can afford to give those $19.99 oil changes away at a loss for the next 10 years. No independent auto repair shop can. So in 10 years, you will find there are no such independent auto repair shops, and every auto repair shop is owned by one or two companies. And not saying that that's exactly where it's headed, but it could, but a worst case scenario, head that way to where you don't have a choice as a consumer now. You have Coke or Pepsi. That's it.
Yeah. And in some ways it's good, right? Like we were talking the other day about, when shops used to bend exhaust pipe and make you custom exhausts and do things like that. Nowadays it's cheaper just to buy the new exhaust because it's already pre-fit and, it's so cheap where it comes from. It's like you're almost better off doing it that way. And so, the shops that used to do that stuff, those are the ones that usually end up going out of business. But at the same time, those are the shops that would pull your engine or spend 2 days trying to figure out an issue or try to help you on the side, off hours. Like, it's like these Mavises will never do that. It's never going to be that way. It will never be a mom and pop situation. And you will always just be a percentage of their profit. It's just unfortunate, but it's just the way.
And it's the same for it'll be the same for the employees, unfortunately. And I've seen that exactly how it pans out. Unfortunately, in those worst case scenarios, is the employees are no different. They're just treated as consumables, Yep.
Yeah.
The minute you treat technicians like just consumables, you're gonna alienate an entire industry, and it's already hard enough to get technicians and people into the automotive industry. I'll leave it at that. But the last thing we need to do is be getting people out of the industry that are already in it.
Yeah, that's true. I 100% believe in that. So I wanted to sidestep a little here and go on to a more fun topic before we dive into some more heavy diagnostic things. Um, we had a conversation recently, and we were talking about 016 oil and how now 08 oil exists and how this is almost like water at this point. And we had the idea of thinking of what weight is canola oil. And we found that canola oil can be anywhere from 030 to 1030. And so this led us down a rabbit hole of, can a Subaru Baja run on canola oil? And we have done a little bit of research. Most of the engines made nowadays are basically rated for petroleum-based fuels and oils. What I found is that in World War II, all the warship engines used to run on canola oil. So we have essentially gone back through history and tried to figure out if this is a possibility. And the best part of this is to fill your Subaru for 4 quarts of canola oil, it would be $10 to $15. Now, think about the savings on your oil change. If you only had to pay for 20 minutes of labor and $10 in canola oil, we're talking big savings. So
and that's retail prices, I think, of canola oil technically.
Yeah. So you
could probably get it cheaper.
Yeah, I think that I just want to know if there's a way for them to design engines to run on canola oil again. I want to know why we moved away from it. Apparently, from everything I read, is that canola oil originally was olive oil, and then it was too acidic, and they had to get rid of all the acid to make it consumable. And apparently, canola oil has only been around for like 50 years. And for those of you who don't know, which I did not know, canola oil is just the shortened term for Canadian oil low acid. So you're welcome for that. And so apparently that's where it landed, is that all of these ships used to run on it. They'll just realize that petroleum based was either more efficient or easier or whatever they decided. But at the end of the day, I just want to know. And so Dave and I had a conversation about running his Baja on canola oil. So
we have a shop Baja. It's kind of our shop beater, so to speak. And but between us, Pat and I kind of made a let's call it gentleman's wager. We're gonna then on our next oil change interval, we're actually gonna switch our shop Baja over to canola oil, and we're gonna see if we can run 3,000 miles on it.
That's all.
The fact that it's a NA Baja. I could probably get an engine here locally, another used one for like $500. So it's an experiment for science. Let's call it that. And we're gonna run, and we'll do updates. Let's call it as these podcasts grow. We'll do kind of updates because we don't drive the thing a ton because it is, again, kind of a shop vehicle. It's not like we're taking a cross country road trip on the thing anytime soon. There's a number of other things, let's call it, that are not really highway up to standard. So we keep it as a go pick up parts down the road a mile or two. But yeah, we're gonna put it in there and see if we can't run some canola oil in our Baja, and we'll keep updates on everybody with everybody and let you know how it's going. We'll make sure to post a video up in the group when we change it out too. We'll make a little post about us swapping over for canola oil. Although I don't know that I'm going to buy just right off the shelf canola oil. I might do some research in seeing if I can get some of that slightly higher weight that we were talking about. Other than I don't know exactly what the weight is of like the stuff you get at the grocery store is. That might not last more than 20 miles, but we want to give it the best shot we can. So let's see if we can find some canola oil with a little bit higher viscosity, but we won't cheat. I want to say for the record, we will not put any other additives whatsoever.
You need the high
straight canola oil.
You need the high mileage canola oil.
High mileage canola oil. Let me Google that later and find out.
you know, when we get to the 2,500 mile mark, you got to make a round up Pikes Peak with canola oil in the engine.
That could be arranged. There's a chance that could be arranged. We are only about an hour and a half from Pikes Peak, so to speak. So it's not that far. We could be there. We could be down there in a minute, and we could set up Baja up there. It would not be a record breaking. Actually, I think we could actually set our own record. We could be the slowest time up Pikes Peak. I wonder what the record. I wonder what the record for the slowest time is, and not a DNF. I'm just saying, like, from actual start to finish, I think the Baja might record the slowest time ever, especially when it's NA too. So it's going to be struggling up there at 14,000 feet.
You know what's crazy? I went to Pikes Peak to the museum and stuff, and when I was looking at all the records, like, it's like, I think they said it's like a half hour to 45-minute ride all the way. And when you look at the records, the person who came in like first place, they did it in like 8 minutes or like 16 minutes or something. And I was like,
pretty insane.
Like, it's so wild to think that somebody did that, and it just blew my mind. But
I get to go every year. I get to go every year to the Pikes Peak, the race. I go up there and camp and watch the race. Sorry, we do as a shop. It's kind of a shop company event, so we go up to Pikes Peak and watch the race. But last year, actually, I rode one of my electric bikes up to the top, and I'll tell you, once you start getting up there above the tree line, it's completely exposed. There's no guardrails. There's nothing. There is complete drop-offs. And I'd be lying if I said on some of those outside corners, I wasn't hugging the double yellow lines, trying to avoid being as close to the edge, because it is just absolute sheer drop-offs. No exaggeration when you see that. And a testament to the drivers that study, like, this is not a feat of, I'm just going to go up there and, it's all about courage. No, it's a lot of preparation for these teams and these guys that do that every year, and just memorizing that course and understanding that, again, I should say, it's not a course, it's a road course. There's unforeseens, there's weather, there's potholes, there's pretty much everything that the mountain, we say here in Colorado, everything the mountain can throw at you, it tries to. And it's one of the reasons I think it's one of the most spectacular, I think, races out there, in the world. Because of just the feat that it is to not only get a car to not overheat. That's one thing, but ultimately to make it to the top in one piece. That's hard.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody knows the Ken Block picture too, where he almost went over the edge. It's
famous.
It's crazy. I mean, it was one of the wildest rides, and
I stopped at that corner and saw where he was, and when you stand there and you see that drop off, you realize, like, it's game over.
A little fact about me you might not know. I used to be a Tiburon guy, and I had a couple of them. I had a supercharged one, and there's a guy in the Tiburon community that's really well known for Pikes Peak. This guy Jonathan Newcomb, who he had this total rally looking Tiburon that he used to race all the way up. He competed like regularly, and he just had such an awesome car, and I was just always so jealous of it because he didn't want to go with any other platform. He chose that, and now he's switched over to a Civic, so it's a little bit less cool. But
he's an incredible driver. I know who you're talking of.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy. But yeah, I could talk about Pikes Peak all day. But basically, the point of this is that canola oil, don't put it in your car, but we'll find out if we can or not, and then you can put it in your car.
We will.
We're gonna find out.
We'll be we volunteer to be the guinea pig.
Yeah.
for
now,
science.
now the next topic we want to dive into is something that I guess rural is an ongoing thing in the Subaru community. We see posts about it in the Subaru Mechanics group every day. People always talking about the AVCS system. For those of you who don't know, it's the active valve control system for the Subaru, and it's for higher efficiency. They say that you get more fuel efficient with better power, better idle. It does a lot of things, and essentially it just changes how the cams kind of function, the intake, or if you have a dual AVS system, it's the intake and the exhaust. And essentially we wanted to show you guys this graphic, and I'm going to have Dave take over and kind of speak to you guys about this because he's the mechanic. So
well, effectively the biggest thing that we have found with the AVCS systems across Subaru platforms, doesn't matter whether it's the dual AVCS or the quad AVCS, these systems, as you can tell kind of here from the diagram, they run on oil pressure. And so it's an oil system that basically is controlled using oil. The number one problems that we see across kind of the board, and I think this transcends not just pertaining to AVCS issues, but anytime somebody posts an issue, whether it be AVCS or not, it's easy for appreciative that anybody posts and says, hey, this problem, this is what fixed my problem, X, Y, Z. And then someone else will chime in, this is what fixed my problem. And what we'll often find, and is disconcerting, is when people go down the rabbit hole where they're effectively starting to replace parts based on what other people have had fixed their problem, because effectively not all problems are the same. It's kind of like going onto the interweb and saying, hey, I got a cough, and someone's like, oh, hey, take this medicine, and the next thing you know, that didn't help anything or made it worse. So in that same vein, we're really, really keen on people making sure that they're replacing parts when that the parts need to be replaced. And what happens when you follow the actual manufacturer diagnostic path of diagnosing any AVCS related issue, the number one step generally is to swap components. So for example, if you have a dual AVCS system, it's real easy for those oil control valves or the solenoid valves, as you can see in the picture there, and this is just for the EJ models. But on the F model motors, it's pretty much still the exact same thing, where you can swap the solenoids and see if the code effectively follows the solenoid. It's kind of a lot of mechanics or a lot of people in the community are well aware of the ignition coil swapping trick. If you got a misfire on cylinder number 1, swap it with number 3 and see if the code follows. If the code doesn't follow, it means you maybe have a spark plug or something, hopefully not more pressing underlying in the engine. But when it comes to just diagnosing these things, if it's easier to swap these things and find out the code effectively doesn't follow, or it does follow, that's the easier path than just throwing parts at things. So that's usually the first place we'll actually recommend people start with, is to swap things around, as they say, because they're easy enough. The next thing, though, is the number one consideration is, unfortunately, the main reason why these systems fail is due to oil contamination. So the fact that it's an oil run system, when you have an engine that is starting to fail, unfortunately, internally, that creates an excess of metal shavings, and that will effectively clog these components. Not just the oil control valves, but also the sprockets themselves, which is where the actual change is actually occurring. And similarly, what happens a lot, and when people have even an engine failure removed from even an AVCS issue, let's say you had a rod knock, well, you need to replace all these components 100%, no questions. The reason why is there's no way to clean these, unfortunately, out, and anyone in our professional experience, anyone that says they can clean them out is doing you a disservice, because we've seen a lot of times, and you can even search through the group for a long time back, where people have had brand new engines put in, and they had their buddy clean these things out, and they're having AVCS codes with the new engine. And the unfortunate problem is not just to simply replace these components now after the fact, because the problem is now, by putting these contaminated components on your new engine, you've reintroduced contamination into your new engine. So it's kind of that, snowball effect.
Yeah. And for everybody listening at home, this is a picture of essentially the cam and how it's connected to the oil control valve. And as I assume the oil pressure changes, it actually tells the cam to either switch to advance or to the retarded operation. So
they're basically just applying oil pressure to one side of a kind of a cam lobe, and you can kind of see that to the left there, the advanced and kind of retard operation. It's basically applying oil pressure to either side, and that's advancing or retarding the cam angle.
Yeah, and you know what? This is a real thing I'm dealing with at work currently, is I have a Chevy, I believe it's called a Rock Boss, or it's one of those Chevy Silverado pickups, and it has these oil control valves down in the valley of the engine, right on top of the cams. So you have to take the whole top of the engine apart to get to these things. And so we were trying to confirm if there was an issue with the oil control valve, and turns out that it actually was stuck open like maybe 2 millimeters difference. That it was enough that it was changing the oil pressure, and it was causing 2 cylinders to turn off while the vehicle was in operation. So it was almost like it was going into that, like when the V8 kicks down into the V4 mode, kind of like the high efficiency. And so we ended up taking the whole thing apart and confirmed that the oil control valve, because this guy only has 4 recorded oil changes on Carfax, he has 150,000 miles on this truck. The oil looked absolutely horrible, and these valves were all gunked up, and of course he's having valve problems. And so I can tell you with Subarus, especially because Subarus run heavy oil, people are always scared about running something too light on these things. And these valves are so small, and I feel like they just are such a simple piece, but they're very flimsy. And, I just feel like this can happen, right? Like you can end up having AVCS problems just based on if you missed an oil change, or if your oil is getting, other stuff in it. It's just a matter of like, you really just need to stay on top of your maintenance to make sure these things stay operational. And then if you are having issues with them, you got to replace the whole thing. There's no fixing them. They're just these cheap little valves almost. So
yeah, 100%. You're totally right. We have definitely seen oil control valve failures. They do happen. It's not to say you need a whole engine replacement. But that's where, as we always say, the interwebs will always kind of give you the worst case scenario. You just type in, I'm feeling cold, and next thing you know, you're 2 clicks away from you have cancer. And so that's kind of where we draw the conclusion. Like, we don't want people to jump off the cliff just yet, but at the same time, we want people to understand a little bit more in depth kind of how this system works, and refrain. Our motto at our shop is, simply put, always refrain from just replacing parts before actually confirming. And it's way easier. This system, luckily, and you gave that example about the Chevy, where fortunately these systems are really easy to get to on a Subaru. On any Subaru, they're really easy to get to. So there's really no excuse to not, simply kind of swap some things around and see kind of what happens, compared to just throwing a bunch of parts at things. And that's, the industry term is, throwing the old parts can at things. And unfortunately, not just with AVCS issues, but, we always tell people at the same, when you post your issue online, whether it be a car issue or not, everyone may have, let's call it, different varying levels of investment in helping you figure out and fix your issue. But at the end of the day, no one's going to be as invested in you to fix your issue, because you're the one that's actually trying to fix it.
Yeah, and I feel like knowing how these parts work is important, right? Like a lot of people may say AVCS issue and they go to a mechanic shop and the guy is now going to charge you to try to clean these valves. Well, you could tell them like, hey, there is no trying to clean these valves, just get new ones and put them in. Like,
Yes.
it's like it's important to know how your stuff works, and especially with something like this, a lot of shops, I feel like if they don't explain it well, you may get confused and not know kind of what's going on. But it's important to just fully understand that like this system is not that complex. It's just more of it has very intricate pieces that if one of them goes, it throws off the whole system, and the car can run super crazy if it's something's out of whack. So
Absolutely.
yeah, some people say the solenoids are faulty, but I mean, I could say with any car part, if it has a solenoid, there's a chance that you could have an issue with it. So, I think that may just be a one-off thing. But as far as these valves go, I haven't seen any application of these valves where they don't eventually have issues if you don't keep on top of the oil or you don't, have your engine constantly maintained. So I would
That's
say
100% with anything.
yeah. I would say to avoid having any issues with this system, I would definitely make sure you're on top of your oil changes and use whatever oil is specific for your build or whatever you have. So
Just not Mobil 1. That's the only oil to not use in a Subaru.
yeah, just
I'll
use
always add that. Canola oil is better than Mobil 1, and we'll be letting everyone know about that. I'm excited. I gotta see where our mileage is at. We're actually probably pretty close to here in the next little bit needing an oil change on the Baja. So I'm excited to make that video and let everyone know that it's official. We got canola oil in the Baja, and we're tracking the mileage, man. We're gonna mark every mile.
Well, my most exciting topic that I've wanted to talk about is what OBD III means for the future. I was reading a little bit about OBD III systems and what has been proposed already for them. And while it would offer a lot more in-depth evaluation of the vehicle, where you may be able to see a lot more things going on and it can actually figure things out on the fly, the side of this I don't like is that they're talking about making this a wireless system. They want this to be able to talk to the internet, talk to your computer, talk to your scanner. They want this thing to be, you no longer have to plug into a car. It just talks to everything. And the side of this I don't like, which I read, listen to this is going to blow your mind. So for convenience, right? For convenience, with an OBD III system, the vehicle's owner would no longer have to take their vehicle to inspection stations for emissions inspections. The government would be able to see the emissions of your vehicle at all times, and the vehicle would be communicating if there are no active emission-related malfunctions, and so you would be able to drive your car. So imagine a world, right, where there are no inspection stickers, right? You no longer have to go to the station, but the cop that pulls you over has something that essentially airdrops your OBD scan to their car, tells them you have a check engine light for emissions, and now you are getting a ticket because you are not passing state emissions. Make it
We're
make
already
sense.
seeing we're already seeing things happening. We're already seeing things happening with emissions changes and standards. I mean, obviously, Cobb has had to make serious changes, to stay compliant. Which kudos and hats off to them for doing the right thing. At the same time, God, this just, I guess the term that immediately comes to mind is, and not to get like copyright in front, but this really grinds my gears, because there's a reason why I like my old car. The over the air updates, I can see certain benefits, wherein like, on a certain level, and this is something that we have a contention with as a Subaru shop. So the fact that understandably there's going to be firmware and software updates for different, systems and things on the car as after it's been released to make improvements. A notable one was, and honestly pertains more to Subaru mechanics, but sometimes it happened to people. If you had your key fob for a Subaru and you parked your car in the garage and you hung your key fob on the key hook right before you walked in the door, but you left it in the garage right there, like a lot of people did. It was too close, according to proximity sensors, and that was actually causing people's batteries to drain too quickly on their cars. Subaru figured this out, and they released a software update for it. We've actually pretty much most every car with the newer fob style without, like, you don't have it's just a push button. They all have this issue, so to speak, unless it's been updated. Unfortunately, you have to go to the dealer and you have to pay the dealer for subsequently. This is something we don't believe in. Every update. So every single update you pay an individual cost for, which just absurd to us. Long and short, we have, shameless plug, just not on us, but like we have the same dealer level software, so we can do the same software updates that they can. It's not that complicated. If you ever updated your apps on your phone and you're the app store, you just go down, update. It's really that easy. And so for them to charge you for each one that they basically press, now each one takes, let's call it 5 minutes. So maybe there's an inconvenience factor for them, but for Christ's sakes, we just hook the car up to the thing. We basically go down the list. We hit everything up that is applicable for update. We plug it into a charger and we walk away for 20 minutes, So we charge you one flat fee shamelessly. And that's my contention is that where it currently is, the landscape isn't great. I get it from the dealership kind of standpoint of people going there and having to pay for individual updates, which is absolute highway robbery by no other definition. Compared to, and not saying you should do this every even year or so, but maybe every other year, bring it by our shop. That's usually what we tell our customers. Every other year, you're probably due for at least 4 or 5 updates. So, pay us one time. We'll just sit there and we'll press all the buttons and we'll walk away and we'll give you all the latest software updates to make sure your car doesn't have any kind of weird little gremlins or glitches. And I guess that's where they're getting to. I see that there's a move to wanting to have that removed to where, you don't even have to go into the dealership and you can just get these updates, so to speak. I would hope for free. Yeah. I would hope. Yeah. We've also seen how much, not just auto manufacturers, BMW, and other companies have let's call them Netflix, have loved their subscription models. Yep. Maybe there's a subscription model where you pay $50 a month to have the latest software of your car. I don't know. Hopefully not. But I see there's always and this is, I think, the problem with some of the technological advancements, because I'm all for improving, but there's always look at what we can do, look at what we can do better. But I also am always keen to look at what are we losing, I guess it's the back of my mind and going, okay, what features are we going to lose out on as the independent repair shops? Are we going to be effectively locked out? I know firsthand for Subarus, with, everyone or most people probably are aware, if you weren't, the Subaru scan tool is called the SSM. It's the Subaru Select Monitor is what it's termed. Well, we're currently up to date with the latest SSM. Unfortunately, there's been rumors, and there's always rumors in any industry, but there's always been rumors that Subaru effectively for the next year, because we pay for a subscription base to have access to this. Subaru luckily gives us access as independents to this, but it's subscription based. So we pay for it. There's a chance that they don't allow that to go forward. They could just say no subscriptions. There's no, we've seen kind of, I guess, on the John Deere side of things, I'm sure you've probably seen where they're, the whole right to repair, and they've kind of taken away the control from the people that have purchased the farm equipment, which is something we believe very, very much against. We believe in the right to repair. If the manufacturers won't give us certain levels of control, humbly, I guess our saving grace has always been China to a point, because there's so many companies like Launch and Autel and all these companies that are, for better or for worse, they're effectively reverse engineering stuff, and so they'll find a backdoor way in one way or another, and we will too. But it's not always the easiest way, and unfortunately, as someone in the industry yourself, the backdoor ways are not always the most ideal ways, from a technician standpoint, and it's way easier to be able to, have manufacturer level, capabilities, just to better the customer, and ultimately it betters the brand, It's good for Subaru.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, I have my 19 WRX, and I was not able to do the radio updates. I was trying to go through their own system, and it wouldn't work. And then finally they released an update through the dealer that I had to go to the dealer to get it done, and it's like, that's one of those things that it's like, why put the feature in if it doesn't work? Like, it's like so crazy. But
and that's annoying to us. Just a side note, because unfortunately, that's the one thing we we figured out we don't have that capability, because when it comes to software updating your radio head units and navigation and stuff, that's all done through a third party kind of affiliation. So, for example, Subaru does not make the head units. They have either JVC or Kenwood or Sony or whoever make that unit. Well, that's who's releasing the software updates and everything for it. So what that means is Subaru dealers have a specific laptop or a separate laptop with Sony software on it that's licensed to them from Sony, that they can now update that head unit. We don't, unfortunately, as a small shop, we just cannot prioritize having everything. Yeah. So that's the one missing link, because we'd not only have to have, and at least the last time I checked, there were 3 different manufacturers for different head units across generations of Subaru. We'd have to have 3 different partnerships with, and again, sometimes these are exclusive brand deals. So we could try calling Kenwood and they'd be like, "Are you a Subaru dealer?" And we go, "No." Well, then you aren't licensed to have this, for security reasons. And they always love to throw that security reasons. We don't want you having access to the software, because you could reverse engineer it, you could sell it, you could do whatever, you could hack into it, you could make people's GPS drive them off a bridge, whatever. So they just don't want, they say it's security based, but it kind of, unfortunately, does go back to that original point of flying in the face of kind of right to repair. It's like, you're not giving us the ability to do these updates easily, So I see the benefit of going wireless and over the air to some extent, but I'm naturally reserved about how it's going to be implemented ultimately.
Well, so a couple things that this would mean. One, AAA would know what's wrong with your car before they even show up. When you call them, they would instantly get the full report of what your car's doing. Something else that it does is they're saying that it would detect emissions malfunctions just based on readings that the car is getting. So like essentially kind of like what's happening now, but you know how you have to run how a monitor has to run before the light sets? This thing would be able to tell what the problem is before the monitor even runs. It would just read the readings from the car and essentially tell you, hey, you're running 39% emissions efficiency or whatever, like it would be able to. They're saying the whole point of this is that they're saying that it would improve efficiency and effectiveness of emissions monitoring so that you could repair your emissions problem faster and essentially stop all these emissions from getting into the air. To me, this sounds like, hey, we really want to know what's going on in your car. And we don't really like when you do things that we don't know about. It's, my overall thing is that I don't want the government knowing what my car is doing. I don't want the cops knowing what my car is doing. I don't want AAA knowing what my car is doing. I just want to know myself when I plug in and choose to look at what my car is doing. And I think that if OBD III ends up relaying emissions information to the government, I'm out. I want nothing to do with
I'll
it.
just stay away. Yeah, I'm with you too. I'll just keep OBD II for life. That's fine. There's a lot of
Yeah.
cars out there with OBD II. And that's the thing. There's always that grandfather-esque, or aspect. You can't
Mm.
make everyone convert to OBD III.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
no way to do that. It's not like everyone mandatory is gonna have to plug a dongle into their OBD II and make them OBD III. It's like, no, you can't make us do that. At least,
I feel
I say here in America, I like to believe,
yeah.
they can't enforce they shouldn't be able to enforce certain things, but
I feel like a lot of us, we're just gonna become Cuba. Like they just drive around in 50s cars, you know? And I feel like we're all just gonna be like, well, I'm living in the 90s for the rest of my life. You know,
this is why the GCs are going to get more expensive.
Yeah. People are just like, you know what? I'm okay with this. I don't need that. So, but you know, I think that the one thing I would want out of an OBD3 system, if I had to have it and it was gonna happen, I would just want my system to essentially be able to access more parts of the car. I mean, my biggest battle is that every manufacturer locks the BCM, trying to get
Yeah.
into the body control module. You know, especially from working on the tuning side of things when I was working in performance, the biggest thing was that you could never get into the BCM, and there were things in there that if you could get in, you could control to help with tuning, but they lock it out and there's no way to get into it. So it ends up just like essentially hurting the customer because, you know, I get why they don't want you in there because there's a lot of things in there that you could mess with that would be a problem. Security. Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, I think it's important that if you bought a car, right, and like why can't you have access to the whole car? Why can't you have access to your ABS system or to, you know, your, I think the TPMS system is in that, but you know, there's codes that they don't want you to turn off in the BCM system, which I understand, but you know, at some point too much control is just too much, you know, and I think I think that if the government could call me up and say, "Hey, we scanned your car from you know, Starlink, and we can tell that you know, you're having a problem," I'd be like, "No, I'm okay."
Yeah, I'm out too.
Yeah,
that's where you lose me. It's unfortunately is. I'm proudly American. Yeah, you don't get to have control over what. Like, there's a reason to have window tint on my car. I just think it's a right to privacy. I don't want people looking in my car. I don't like fishbowling, man. It makes me feel weird. Like everyone's looking at me, and like the kid in the back seat in the road trip's like, "Hey, look at him."
Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, I think we just like where we're at. I think things are easy and simple.
Things are in a good spot right now. We're sounding like two old men here, you know. Just we want to leave things alone where they're at, you know. That's what they used to. I feel like this is what happens when happened when if there was podcasting when fuel injection came out. No, carburation. We're not going EFI. No way, no way. And now we have direct injection. It's just like, all right, hold on. I'm out. That's what I feel like the older part in me is getting more set in my ways. I maybe need to build a carbureted Subaru to get the feeling back.
You know, something I forgot to mention is that part of the OBD3 system is they're saying that they would send trouble codes directly to the repair shop that you go to. So this to me is a double-sided sword, right? Your job becomes easier. You can make an appointment for this car coming in, knowing what codes it has already. The code scan is done. On the other side of it, right, part of you diagnosing the car, you're billing for code scanning the vehicle and going through the information in it. You know, I understand that, like, most people.
Is it going to give you freeze frame data though? That's the big question. If it's going to send us codes, is it going to give us freeze frame data? Because every time, I know you feel the same way. A customer comes in, hey, I had a check engine light. It had this code. Okay, you got to scan it. Why is the check engine light on? Did you clear it? Yes, I cleared it. You cleared more than the code. You cleared all of the applicable data that I needed to help diagnose this problem.
Yep.
So, as another PSA, people, please stop clearing codes before you bring them to the shop. We need that code on.
The worst possible thing is AutoZone. And their new thing where they scan the code and they have a computer system that tells people this is the problem and this is how to fix it. I don't know a red scanner that could do that. Somebody call Snap-on, because AutoZone has the tech of the future. It can fix your car just by scanning it, because it's crazy. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, Dave, I appreciate you giving me your time again. And I think everybody should be looking forward to your canola oil adventures. And yeah. And we want to hear your thoughts on OBD III, what you think it should be. What features are you looking for? What do you hope the government's not watching? And I would say just let us know. And we will catch you guys next week for another episode, and we will be back. Catch you later, and thanks again, Dave.